by calling the meeting of the Cohasset Planning Board to order for March 22, 2023. I have a roll call, alphabetical roll call vote. Who's here?
Clark Brewer here.
Tom Callahan here.
Amy Glassmeyer here.
Kevin Hine here.
Deirdre Hobson here.
Chris Black's here.
Right, and we also are pleased to have Lauren Lind back with us running our meeting tonight. Carolyn Murray is here. Angela is not with us tonight, but she will do the minutes from a recording. I'm going to start tonight just so we don't lose it at the end of the night. We have 3 minutes from January 25th, February 15th, and March 8th. I hope everybody's looked at them. I had made one edit with Angela on the March 8th ones. Can I have a collective motion to approve all three? Let's get it out of the way.
Collective? I'll make a motion.
Collective. January 25th, February 15th, and March 8th minutes.
I think Clark moved it, so I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Well, there goes the orderly roll call. All right, thank you. That's out of the way. All right, so next we have our continued public hearing for 55 South Main Street. Sorry for all the confusion, but we are going forward with that tonight. I don't think there is any expectation of finishing tonight, but has everybody been promoted who needs to be promoted? I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
All right, so I was going to start with Jim Reardon, our consultant, since his peer review letter of March 20 is relatively new, and I had earlier, I hope you got the email, I earlier had asked Jim to just kind of go over the highlights of the issues that are still outstanding. We don't have to wade through 24 pages here, and let's focus on the issues. You know, I've checked off a bunch that I see, so Jim, I'll give you the floor to give us the executive summary of all those things.
You bet, Tom.
And then what we'll do is we'll hear from the applicant in response, we'll hear from the public, and we'll hear from the board.
Thank you very much, Chair Callahan. So I'm Jim Reardon from West End and Sampson. I will give a brief peer review. I'm going to share my screen. This will be about a 5-minute summary. So, and I did see your email, so we're trying to keep it short and sweet. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is actually the third iteration of the peer review. We did one in September and another one in October that was just focused on transportation. This one is more comprehensive, that is addressing all the issues or all the topics anyways that were raised in September. See if I can get it to advance. There it goes. All right, so this is the most recent version of the site plan we have. This is from the applicant. So this is the November 22 revised version of the site plan, just to give you an idea of where the proposed project is located. List of materials that we received. I'm not going to go through all these, but I just wanted to make you aware. These are the ones that we use to focus on for this iteration of the peer review. There's a complete list of them in the peer review memo that we sent, including the ones that we have reviewed previously. So the ones from the October 26 memo and the ones from the September 28 memo. Topic areas that we're covering in this peer review include bylaw compliance, site plan layout, utility and stormwater management, traffic and circulation, environmental site review, and architecture. So as far as bylaw compliance goes, there are really two issues that we raised. These issues were also raised in the September 28 peer review. One has to do with floor area ratio, and we understand that the applicant has asserted that they have a floor area ratio of less than 1.3. We think that they do. It's just that we need clarification on the site plan because there are two different total areas mentioned for the site plan. And so clarification on that would be helpful. Either one of them, I think, would put them below 1.3. Ms. Glassmeyer,
Oh,
did
no,
you have
just
for
keep
comment?
going. I just wanted to, there's an item that I want to be able to speak to and I didn't want to forget.
Okay. All right. The next item we include here is the overlay district design guidelines. This has to do with the abutters list, and we haven't received any confirmation that that's been received by the town. That's something that's required, and so we need that confirmation.
Could you just take a moment and explain the floor area ratio to me and members of the public that may not be familiar with that, what it is? In
Sure.
general, please.
Sure. So that has to do with the amount of floor area in the buildings based on the area ratio of the site. So you put one over the other, numerator over the denominator, and that gives you the floor area ratio. So
What's the numerator and what's the denominator?
the numerator is the floor area, total floor area. So that's on each of the levels of the building. So first floor, second floor, or third floor, you add those together and you put them over the area of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren, do you have your hand up for a reason?
Yes, I just wanted to state that the section for the overlay design district guidelines, the town did receive a set of a butters list certified from the assessor's office from the applicant. So I can confirm that right now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, the next comments that we have on here have to do with the site plan layout. These were all identified in the September 28th memo, peer review memo. They have since been addressed, and we have no further comment on any of these 5 items. There are a couple others that we do. So they include parking, ADA access, pardon me, construction materials used, the wayfinding signage, and the outdoor furnishings. So each of these items again have been addressed, and we have no further comment. However, under the site plan layout, we do continue to have this comment on lighting. So we're requesting modeling of the lighting to confirm that the plan meets local standards.
Can I ask a question that's related to parking? Since it
Yeah,
appears,
Ken.
may I do that, Tom?
Well, I was
Can
gonna.
you want me to wait? I will.
Yeah, I'll leave all of our comments till after we've heard from our
That's fine.
consultant and their son. Thanks.
All right. The next comment that we have on the site plan layout has to do with the plantings. The applicant did address a number of comments having to do with the plantings. Some of that was narrative and some of it was in parts of the site plan, but they did not provide a new landscape plan, and we'd like them to do that. Some new comments that we have, so these relate to 3 topics: demolition and erosion plan, site plan layout, and grading and utility plan. Under the demolition and erosion plan, so we'd like the applicant to reconsider or consider relocating the parking entrance, and also revising the construction sequencing to include surface paving. So that wasn't listed, or that wasn't identified as part of the sequencing. Site plan layout items, so clarification on meeting the ADA requirements. Wheel stops to protect the plantings that were included on the site plan, clarifying the efficaciousness of the porous pavement. So there's indication that they're going to use porous pavement for control of stormwater, but it's not clear that the soils will drain appropriately for that. So that's the main question having to do with that. Trash and recycling at the site. So this would primarily pertain to after the site is built. It's just not clear how solid waste will be removed. Consistency of the building coverage and rear yard dimensions. So there's some variability in that from through different parts of the application. And so we would like that clarified. Pardon me. Grading and utility plan, so spot elevations are needed for us to be able to confirm the ADA compliance at the site, and confirming the appropriateness of the drainage easement. With the applicant proposed a 20-foot wide easement, and it's not clear that the drainage infrastructure will fit within that. We had a number of utility and stormwater management comments. Those comments have been addressed, and we have no further comments on those. So that whole section, for our purposes anyways, we feel has been addressed. Traffic and circulation. So we had a number of comments here. Providing appropriate crash data and crash worksheets. So that data was provided. We would recommend, based on looking at that data, that a stop sign is installed on the parking way where it intersects with South Main, I think. Then providing additional clarification on how tandem parking spaces will be utilized and allocated. So there was information provided about that. We would like on the site plan that those tandem spaces, we understand they're going to be used for 2 and 3 bedroom units only, that is clarified on the site plan. Sidewalk on James Way. So we'd ask that the applicant reconsider the need for a crosswalk there. The sidewalk on South Main Street, confirm compliance with Mass DOT and add detectable ADA ramps. So I believe there were ramps included, but they didn't include detectable ADA. Site distances. So we mentioned in our October 26th, we requested some additional information. That still needs to be provided so that we can review it. Parking lot landscaping. So we felt that this comment was addressed, and we have no further comment on that. New comments for traffic and circulation. So in the Dennehy letter, where there's a list of responses to comments that we had, there was a full paragraph there was a paragraph towards the end of that letter where the sentence seems to cut off before it was intended. And that appears to reference traffic impact issues. And so we'd like clarification on that. Environmental site review. So we understand that the applicant's going to hire an LSP and they'll be present at the site. We think that that's a good idea. However, the comments from our September 16 peer review weren't addressed directly. And so we'd ask that those be addressed directly. They're just listed out here for reference. Architectural comments. So these were all generally addressed, and we have no further comment. They include the flat roof. We feel that that's been addressed. The building facade, egress and sprinklers, ADA compliance for the buildings, the electric vehicle charging stations. All these, again, have been addressed, and we have no further comment on them. And that concludes our summary of the peer review.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
All right, Cassie, who on your team is taking the lead here? I presume you have some responses to this to give to us. I would ask that you try to be as brief as possible.
Sure. I was going to have Greg in John's absence, since he's attending family matters. Greg was going to lead point tonight. Also just wanted to apologize for the miscommunication yesterday. We're trying to give John some space, and it seems like he responded, just always working on the client's behalf. But I'm glad that everyone was able to meet today, and thanks for allowing us to meet with you.
Always respect your lawyers. We're important.
Yep. The only thing I wanted to note before Greg started speaking was just that Cassandra helped coordinate a meeting with the Affordable Steering Committee yesterday. Just as a courtesy, we wanted to present to them again, just to share with them our application proposal for offsite affordability. So I just wanted to share with you guys that we did meet yesterday afternoon with them.
Great. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. I'm going to do a share screen here and put a copy of our site plan up to discuss real briefly. I did receive the peer review earlier this week, had a chance to go through it, and I just jotted down all of the comments that Jim had brought up regarding the bylaw compliance, the floor area ratio. The floor area ratio is noted on sheet 4 of our plan here. Your bylaw allows a maximum of 1.3 as a floor area ratio. We come in under that. We come in at 1.23 as our floor area ratio. I think what the comment that Jim had is right here we have a floor summary, and we summarize on the first floor a floor area of 3,350 square feet, which is the commercial space on the first floor. The remainder of the building, being residential, is defined by the number of residential units. So we document that there are residential units on the second and third floor. Down here for the floor area ratio, however, the first floor lists an area of approximately 5,600 square feet. That's because on the first floor, there is residential floor area. There's a residential lobby, there's a residential mail room, but it's not documented in the commercial space because it's residential space. Regardless, I think, as Jim noted, whether you use the 3,300 or what I see as the proper answer using the 5,600, you come out with a floor area ratio of 1.23, your bylaw allowing no greater than 1.3. So we comply with that. You've just heard with the town planner that we did submit a full list of abutters with the project. Regarding the site plan comments that were just made, we did submit a set of photometric plans with this. The locations that were highlighted were along essentially the corners of the property over here along South Main Street, the intersection here of Parking Way and South Main Street, and kind of along this sidewalk here. We certainly can look at those lighting areas a little bit closer. I think any of the things that were listed as outstanding tonight are something that could be ultimately conditioned into an approval and don't really require a full site redesign or change. We are proposing lighting throughout the site. Obviously, it is dark sky compliant. It does have protective shields on it to prevent spillover onto abutting properties. It has to be compliant along the sidewalks and parking areas. That is our intent. Regarding a landscape plan, there was a request for a revised landscape planning, potentially adding a 5th tree along South Main Street. We had 4 trees proposed along South Main Street. We have no problems adding an additional tree along South Main Street. We can do that, whether it be via condition or a revised landscape plan. Regarding the demolition and erosion control, we put together a preliminary, erosion control plan for the site with erosion controls along the perimeter. We had identified that the contractor would put up a construction entrance, essentially for access to the site at this location. This is where the existing curb cut is onto South Main Street. This is where the entrance would be for, the first phase of construction, if you would, the demolition of the existing building, the demolition of the parking lot, some of the infrastructure being built. At some point in time, yes, the construction entrance would likely change. It would change over to this location off of Parking Way because the new building would be constructed in this location. I think there is additional detail that could be put on this plan as well as the construction sequence. I think it would be appropriate to have a condition that at a pre-construction meeting, we fully outline when we have a contractor on board, what the steps would be here and when those things would move. That doesn't affect the overall nature of this project. The recommendation that wheel stops be added, I think Jim's referring to these parking spaces we have here. We have landscaping, prop LS in front of those. Those spaces all have light post bollards essentially in front of them, but we'd be glad to add wheel stops in front of them as well, just as added protection for that landscape bed. Not a problem with that. Regarding ADA compliance, our site is ADA compliant. We have a grading sheet which documents the elevations on the site. You can always add additional spot grades at all of the locations, but we do have spot grades like where my cursor is here. We have spot grades coming up to the front entrances of the building. We have them along the sidewalk, documenting that along the sidewalk, we have no more than a 5% grade. Out here in the pervious walkway areas in front of the building on South Main Street, I think the maximum grade is 2% at those locations. Again, it does comply with ADA standards. There was a mention about the James Brook culvert, if 20 feet wide is appropriate or not. That's an existing easement. We're not proposing any drainage easements on this project. The drainage easement, as you see it, is right here. It traverses the corner of our site. It's 20 feet in width. We maintain the James Brook culvert in its existing location. We do have drainage that ties into the James Brook culvert. The existing site drains there already. Regarding traffic, you saw a recommendation that we have a stop sign at Parking Way. We already specify that on our site plan here. Proposed stop sign and stop line with a street name. That's been done. The tandem spaces, we've identified that they are to be assigned. Basically, one of the unit owners would own or would have access to the parking space in the front, in the back. That is noted on our plan down here. Parking spaces 1 through 12 shall be assigned as exclusive use to each of the 12 residential units. That way it prevents someone from being blocked in. They would have control of that. A comment I didn't understand was a reconsideration of a sidewalk or a crosswalk. We are proposing 2 crosswalks. We're proposing one right here, which connects the sidewalk on South Main Street over to the Red Lion property so that it continues on essentially. The other one is right here across the driveway of our project, which connects to the Pompeo property, Dr. Pompeo. You know, I realize there are, there's the town parking lot back here. You get a lot of people that walk down Parking Way right now. There is no sidewalk on Parking Way. They walk aimlessly. We're proposing a sidewalk with a formal crosswalk here. We think it gives definition. It's a better pedestrian access. I don't see the need to eliminate that. And again, same on this side, we're connecting 2 sidewalks on South Main Street. I see the need for a crosswalk at that location.
Greg, I also just want to add, I think the sidewalk is also required to have full accessibility around the site.
It is, and that goes to one of the comments there was, we do provide right here in this note, 5-foot wide concrete ADA ramp with detectable warning. So we have those warning strips specified at anywhere where we have that crosswalk and where we have that ramp. That was one of the comments. A question regarding the site distances. This is an existing intersection. There's already cars that come in and out of that intersection. We're not altering that intersection other than putting a crosswalk across it and putting a stop sign where there should already be one, in my opinion. There is parking, obviously, within South Main Street. That parking will, slightly block some of the site distance on South Main Street, but there are existing spaces there. There's existing streetscape. You have a very unique situation in downtown Cohasset. You have directly across the street parking spaces that are backing into the traveled way. It's an area that's, essentially light traffic. I'd like to think that speed is relatively reduced during the busy times. I'm not aware that this is an intersection that has significant public safety accident data. Has not been identified as having any sort of negative impact by our traffic review consultant. Regarding the environmental aspect of this site is completely under the jurisdiction of the Massachusetts DEP. The DEP is involved in this site. You've heard from our licensed site professional, Mark Germano. He's going to be involved throughout the project with managing soils, managing groundwater in accordance with DEP's standards as they pertain to hazardous waste cleanup. The architecture seems like they were all addressed on the architectural standards. I think we're getting very close to a close with this. I turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Greg. Jim, before we go further along in the meeting, let me ask if you have any responses you want to make to what you just heard.
The one related, the comment related to the tandem parking spaces, that had to do with noting which units were going to have those, and that they were only going to be limited to 2 and 3 bedroom units. I think that Mr. Morse pointed out that the units would be assigned. There's a note to that effect, but it didn't say that it was to 2 and 3 bedroom units, if I understood him correctly.
And Jim, just to clarify, is that something that the community has asked for, or that comment to be reserved for 2 to 3 bedroom units? Where is that comment?
So if I may, on sheet 4 of my plan set, Jim, it says right here, tandem parking spaces will be assigned to 2 and 3 bedroom units.
Okay,
Is
good.
that right on the plan?
Great.
Already.
And that's a request of the community, Jim?
That was a suggestion that Jim had made earlier on, and we incorporated into the revised plans. Yep.
Yep, that was in the peer review. Let me see, there was one having to do with the crosswalk, I think on James Way. And the reconsideration of that was whether I think it was whether a crosswalk was needed or not. It was just going back through the peer review to try and identify that.
Well, the crosswalk across the entrance to Parking Way to the Red Lion, or across the parking lot, the parking entrance?
I think it was across the parking entrance.
If they're doing a sidewalk, I don't see the problem with it, to encourage, he's right. Today, there is no sidewalk, so people walk down the middle of Parking Way when, there may be traffic, they have to move out of the way. So if it encourages that to stop, I don't see a huge issue with that.
Yeah, we think it just adds definition where there isn't any currently, so.
Right. All right.
And I think that might be it for now. Oh, the LSP comments, so related to the environmental site plan, we'd still recommend that those issues are addressed, whether or not they're under the jurisdiction of the state or not.
Yeah, they're required to be addressed, under the federal and state requirements. So absolutely, they will be. That's a requirement.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with you that these are things, these comments that we have at this point are things that could be addressed as conditions. But again, we would recommend that those are addressed so that it's clear.
Right.
Okay. All right, with that done, Amy, hold tight. You're going to be first up for us, but we have some attendees. I also note we got an anonymous comment today about the affordable housing decision that we've already made. I'll just remind the public, while we will, of course, we read it and we saw it and we know what the comment is, it's hard for us to deal with anonymous comments, and I would appreciate that people actually put their name and address on comments to the board in the future. We have 6 members of the public out there. Does anybody have a comment or wish to be heard on anything that they've heard tonight? Hearing none, seeing none. All right, we'll go to the board. And Amy, since you've had your hand up, you will start us off. We'll go alphabetical from you.
Thank you. Thank you for the continuing work on this project. My comments focus on parking, sprinklers in the garage, lighting, and the consideration of a blinking light rather than a stop sign on Parking Way and at the intersection of South Main. So to begin with, I would like to know what mechanism or guarantee can be in place such that households or residents in apartments that are 2 or 3 bedrooms, what kind of rights do they have for the transfer of their parking spaces? So let's imagine a situation in which you have a 3-bedroom apartment, you have 2 adults, they have 3 parking spaces, and they wish to rent their 3rd parking space or their tandem parking space to someone else, someone that either lives in the building or is outside of the building, will the owner of the multi-bedroom units be constrained to not treat that as a resourceable property? That, and what I mean by that is that they could essentially rent it out to somebody else. Why am I concerned about that? I'm concerned about that because the person could potentially not live there or not have the same sense of respect for the way in which the system is being designed. So can there be a mechanism by which we write something into some condition that there be specification about the use of multiple parking spots per apartment? That's the first thing.
Well, I mean,
second thing-
can I just say, let me take one crack at that. First of all, I don't think we know if these are, in the end of the day, are going to be rental or condos. And how the parking spaces are treated, first and foremost, depends on which choice is made. And if they are renters, they're going to be assigned a space. They don't own the space. If they're a condo, normally in a condo, these would be assigned exclusive use common areas, but they wouldn't own them, such as they would own their unit. I think the condition about making sure that no spaces are rented out ultimately to off-site individuals can be put in, but how
I
they're going to
appreciate the
be.
clarification that there is.
Yeah, I know, but how that's going to be done is their decision first, if it's rental or condo, and then certain things naturally follow from that decision.
Amy, I was just gonna say that I think it's a good concern. Typically, the way that I've done it before is that you receive almost either a card or something, an RFID reader that it matches your license plate. And so it'll just be monitored, making sure that you can't share that. Usually the ones that stick right up at your dashboard are better than the cards. So to your point, you can't share them with anyone, but it will be tied to your license plate, and that license plate will be tied to either a lease or a PNS.
Okay, I was not familiar with the mechanism for regulation. The second issue is sprinklers in the garage. I've raised this in the previous discussions, and here's my concern. My concern is that because you're limited by height, it means all heights per floor are, of course, a precious space. And I would like to know what kind of sprinklers can be used in the garage in such a manner that today's vehicles, which are so big, can actually fit in that. And is that a consideration or concern?
Sure. So the complete sprinkler system has not been fully mechanically engineered at this point, but they have dry chemical systems. They also have water systems. It would be appropriately sized, for the vehicles that are in that space. We've committed and we're required to have it be a sprinklered building. Absolutely. So.
But when you say that it would be appropriately sized, I guess my comment still is relevant, at least to my concerns, which is if you look at how many people in town have SUVs that are significantly larger than a car, they're designed as a truck. It's a car on a truck body. I guess I'm just concerned that be really carefully monitored because the spaces are going to be so tight. So that's just a concern. The third item, which I can't remember if we actually resolved, but I want to have it reconfirmed, and that is in residential settings, we make a significant effort to ensure that all structures are encouraged to use dark sky lighting. And given that the structure is going to have, a full 360 that people are going to be able to be around, and there are people on every side that would be influenced, is there documentation in the project description that asks kindly and for that to be a consideration as the building is designed?
Yes, there is. On sheet 4 of my site plan, there's a lighting note. It says all proposed lighting shall be dark sky compliant.
Great.
And
thank you. And then last, I appreciate the fact that there'll be a stop sign at the intersection of Parking Way and South Main, but I have a concern because of the intensity of the use of that exit and entrance during the best weather seasons when the red line is going to be very actively engaged. I mean, they're already booked for a year for hotels. So they're going to be using the parking space, and at night, the parking spaces are completely consumed. And people are trying to get in and out, and they're going from here to there. And so I worry that a stop sign is not a sufficient alert for people that A, may not be from here, or B, may not be in the best condition. And so I'm wondering whether or not we could have a stoplight, you know, a flashing light rather than a stop sign.
I would have to talk with our traffic consultant, but I can't imagine that the level of traffic that's there on a daily basis, you know, warrants a stoplight at that location. I can find out more on that, but I can't imagine that that's an appropriate location for it.
I would appreciate that, because I can imagine that they actually have stoplights that, you know, stop and start lights that can be turned on at different hours of any time of day. So it isn't the case that it would have to be onerous and obnoxious for people, but it would be a much more deliberate signaling for people going to try to get out onto the street where there's cars parked along the street and coming in both directions. So I'd appreciate it if you could look into that.
Good. I think another option that's maybe an alternative from a traffic light would be a stop sign that has the LED flash on it.
Yeah.
You know, that might be an appropriate application of that.
I was going to ask Jim, is there a dividing line, you know, between the choice of the two? Is there some criteria? But I was also going to point out at the Grove Street and whatever street intersection in
In
Norwell,
Norwell.
it has the flash, it has a stop sign with flashing red lights all around its perimeter. And it grabs your attention, I can assure you.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
But I don't know if there's like a threshold that you choose one over the other, you know, and I don't know if any of you guys are enough traffic experts to know that.
I'd
The
just
midpoint
appreciate
now with these-
a look at this to see if it's possible.
We can
Yeah.
look at examples. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
All
And
set, Amy?
as
Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
I was going to say, as far as the request for sort of a threshold, I'd have to check into that a little bit and talk to one of our traffic engineers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the Norwell one is very visible, like, you know, somewhere in between the two. So anyway, all right, we all set, Amy? All right, thank you. Deirdre. No, I'm sorry, Kevin's next in the alphabetical order thing. Sorry, I get to think a little more, Deirdre.
I appreciate Amy's comments. With regard to the final point, I don't see how 12 units, whether they're rental or approximately 12 units, whether they're rental or condominium, will add substantially to the amount of traffic going onto Parking Way and South Main Street that would warrant additional signaling device being necessary there. My points I'd like to discuss is I didn't hear anything with regard to engineer for the applicants information on what type of infiltration tests and the number of which and location that they would consider with regard to our peer engineer comment about concern for infiltration. I was wondering if you could provide any additional information on that at this point.
Sure. We looked at kind of a couple of things out here. First off, when we do a drainage analysis, we do an existing conditions analysis. This site in its existing condition is 100% impervious surface. It's completely existing building or paved over surface. In the proposal, we're reducing the impervious surface by 35%. So that reduction alone, providing landscaping areas, is a decrease in rate and volume of runoff off the site. Okay. When it comes to infiltrating stormwater, we have essentially a two-part approach on this site. The parking area in the back is a porous pavement. The porous pavement has a cross section on the plans that underneath it has a pretty significant volume of stone that would fill up with water in a rainfall event, and then that water slowly infiltrates into the soil underneath. There have been several soil tests out here and several borings that were done. Those have been submitted, I believe, as part of the environmental report. You saw borings with that. We also witnessed test pits when the tanks were removed and there was soil testing done at the site there. We had sandy soils at the site. The soil here, it was a lot deeper to groundwater as well as ledge than I anticipated originally. And we had very sandy soil. So I think the infiltration rate is not going to be a major concern with our drainage. Secondarily, the site in its existing condition, again, 100% of it being impervious, flows out to the street to a catch basin that discharges into the James Brook culvert. We do have essentially an overflow catch basin that if there was an issue with any sort of infiltration under the parking lot, it would overflow into the James Brook culvert, essentially in the fashion that it already does. So we have looked at the soils out there. We have done soil tests and borings. We feel that the soil is sufficient to allow a porous pavement to be used in this case.
Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate the additional information in that regard. The second and final question I have is, where was the applicant with regard to electric vehicle charging options for each residential parking space? Can you just can someone provide a brief point of clarification as to where you stand on that?
Sure. So we haven't designated any of the parking spaces specifically as an EV charging station. I think we are committed to providing an EV charging station. I think that would probably be on a reserved basis. You would reserve a time to use it. We do have an overabundance of parking. We have 150% of what the zoning requirement is here. We have 12 units. We have 18 parking spaces on the site. So it would be a reserved unit that you'd reserve interior of the building, whether that's through an app or a sign up for that space.
So I would just add that I could see with increasing uptake of electric vehicles, not just within our community, but statewide, and the statewide and national push for that. The use of EVs at this property could be higher than what you even anticipate now or see now. And there are EV chargers available nearby within the town parking options there. I would like to see, and this could perhaps be an order of condition, a set number of units available to the unit residents, so that basically someone doesn't just get an EV vehicle and is happy as can be because 25-50 yards away is a town-owned spot that they can essentially commandeer whenever they like because it's so accessible to them, in lieu of having access to one on the property. Not just maybe one on the property, but a set ratio or number of them on the property available to them and their other residents in the same building.
Okay. Understood. I can look at the number of EV spaces.
Greg, I think our proposal had offered to provide the infrastructure for someone to bring in an EV charging station as opposed to supplying one on site. We just didn't know what the demand would be, but we'd be providing the infrastructure and capabilities for an EV charging station on site.
Okay.
So there's two things with that, Casey, and you guys have probably thought this through, but I just would add that, the wiring is the infrastructure, and then within each assigned space, there would be the actual hardware to use as a plug-in device to provide that from internal wiring within the walls to between the vehicle and that internal wiring. So providing it in the walls is the first step. Are you saying you would actually provide the hardware at the parking space, or that would be for the resident to do on their own?
Jan, so you have a Tesla. Do you want to say what you usually do?
Yeah, no, we would provide definitely all the cables and wires to each spot. And then it's really dependent on which car there is. There are different systems. So we can't pre-install it because my Tesla would not work on my Volvo. As you know, they're all different systems. So that would be part of the either PNS or the lease that, if you have a Tesla, we install a Tesla charger. If it's a Mercedes, it's the Mercedes charger or whatnot. But each space would have all the cables and all the infrastructure ready to go. And then it's really dependent on who owns the spot and what car it is. We can't pre-install that, because each car is different.
Okay, so what I just heard is then that the applicants here, the developers of this property, and or perhaps the management company would provide that at a cost to the actual unit, not just residential property, but that parking spot owner. I think that would need to be need to be written into an order of condition. Tom, the clarification on that. And that's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Great.
Deirdre?
First, I'd like to thank the applicant for all the hard work they've done on this project. Obviously, we would like to see this property look and be better for Cohasset. I echo Kevin's comments about the electric car. I'll just tell you, in my neighborhood, I now have 6, which is 3 months ago, that wasn't a reality. So I do appreciate the fact that things are moving that way. And if we just can make sure that the parking spaces are equipped with the appropriate technology. It's not my thing, so the appropriate technology for that component. And as far as parking, traffic flow out of James Way, or Parking Way, I don't really have an issue with a stop sign. I do like the light up ones. I'm not sure if you're living in the condo unit or apartment units, you're going to like the flashing lights, but maybe it can be set up to be on at certain times when there are events at the Red Lion and when there are things going on in the town. And then other than that, my only issue, and Tom, you can tell me, although he disappeared, is the affordable housing issue is still out there. So with that, I'm very happy with what so far has been done. I'm sure the applicant will continue to address the issues that we have in our peer review document. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you, Deirdre. Chris?
Just briefly piggybacking on Kevin's comments about electric vehicle charging, not taking a position, just further complicating the issue with another idea, is that the utility dryer plugs, it's very common for an EV charger to be somewhat modular and could plug into the dryer plugs. That might be an option worth considering. I don't know if the applicant hates that or if Kevin hates that, but that's another option I'll just throw out there. That's my only comment tonight, Tom.
All right, thank you, Chris. Clark?
I don't have any particular comments. I would like to thank Jim Reardon for his efforts in being our eyes and ears on the details of the project. When do we think we're going to close the public hearing?
I'll get to that. I have no substantive comments beyond what's been said tonight to make either. So right now, I think we're looking at our next meeting of April 12th to wrap this up. I think, whatever additional materials, they need to be done soon, get to Jim Reardon well in advance of the 12th. That's what, 3 weeks off. I think we have plenty of time to get this wrapped up. Lauren, I don't know with your status, are you helping us write the decision? Because you used to at least pull together all the boilerplate stuff at the beginning.
Yes, I'll be helping you with the decision. So my other request was I can help, as we have in the past, do some items of conditional statements that will resolve some of the peer review. But if Greg Morse has anything in particular that he wants to suggest, that would be handled through a condition, if you could send that to me in advance, that way I can have the board be prepared to review that and we can do a live editing of a document on the 12th.
Right. We usually invite the applicant in a project of this size to suggest conditions if you'd like. It doesn't mean we're going to accept them, but we'd need those in advance. let John know that. And likewise for the members of the board between now and the 12th, if there's particular conditions, and fresh in your mind, start writing them down. But that's good to know that Lauren will start us off in a draft and we'll work from that. But we'll look to close the hearing on the 12th, absent any, major development. My only other substantive question was, I guess the issue of shielding the stuff that's on the roof, is that's been taken care of?
So
Yeah.
that might be one of the suggested conditions. At this point in time, the full mechanical layout has not been done.
Okay,
We'll certainly commit to shielding the mechanicals that are on the roof. I think there are several options on how that can be done, whether it's, with a fabric screen, whether it's with a wooden screen, or enclosures, that might be something that we submit to the board for your final sign off. Once we have the definitive answers on what mechanicals are going up there, what sizes they are.
I've never heard of a fabric screen, but I can't believe it would work in the wind around here, but
Yeah,
just an idea. Before we finish up, so I see Amy's hand up, but first, Carolyn, was there anything you wanted to add or things we should consider at this point?
The only issue I had, and I realize I think I might have missed the February meeting on this, was just addressing the inclusionary zoning aspect of this. I think you mentioned, Tom, that the board did vote, and I might have missed that meeting.
Yeah, we're going to put in a condition that is similar to what we did for the harbor project, that will give them the option to pursue something off-site. We've made it clear that we wouldn't want that to be in an existing village building to take away what we, inventory in the village. And if they can't do it, they're gonna have to put the units in the project. So,
Okay.
Amy, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, this is just a last comment, which is about the maintenance of the pervious surface. So we're going more and more toward that when we can. And one of the issues that arises with that is maintenance. And so do we have any predilection to have a condition that there be something about how that's going to be maintained? Because it's not a blacktop. It's not it has its own special processes that are required.
Yeah, I think we can put a covenant in for that, correct, Carolyn?
I believe we submitted probably as part of our stormwater permit application, a post-construction operation and maintenance plan, which would address the porous pavement. I'll make sure that you have a copy of it. It may.
Yeah, make sure we do, because because Concom has it, doesn't necessarily mean we have it. So
Exactly. I'll make sure you have a copy.
But
Thank you.
that's something we can do, Amy, as a covenant that runs with the land, so it's perpetually an obligation of the property owner to maintain that. So, all right, anybody else? I'll give the public one last shot, but I don't see anybody with any comments, so. All right, so I'll entertain a motion that we continue this to April 12th at 6:30.
I'll
I
make-
so move.
Go
I
ahead.
make a motion. Continue to April 12th.
I second.
All right, alphabetical roll call.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, aye.
Chris Plex, aye.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Cassie and your team.
Thank you,
Jim.
everyone. Thank you, Jen,
Thank you.
and the Weston and Sampson team. Really
Just
appreciate it.
Make sure you get those things to Weston and Sampson as soon as possible so that we all have it. And Jim, just, you let us know if there's any still outstanding issues to deal with. Whether you need to be here on the 12th or not, we can talk about. But again, too, if you have any suggested conditions, you're welcome to submit some ideas for us.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
But thanks for being here tonight.
If I
Thank you
could
very
just-
much.
All
Just
right.
on that, I'm sorry, just if it's not been made clear already, I just want to reiterate for the applicant, just if for the ease of communication and in the interest of time, you can email things directly to Jim. I know you have his contact information. Just please make sure you keep Cassandra Thayer's email copied on everything so that we also have a copy of the communication.
Okay.
You should
Lauren,
make sure
when
that I
do
have-
when do you officially leave the town?
Oh, I've officially left already and my town email doesn't exist anymore. So if
Perfect.
anyone is
I noticed
emailing me,
that.
it's nothing personal. That's why Cassandra will make sure I get everything, but I am just working interim right now through my personal accounts and things. So I'm still here in the background, keeping things afloat, but
Good to see you.
thank you. Same here. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you all, board
Thanks.
members and the applicant.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a little break. I had alerted Judge Cutler to join us at 7:30, seeing that we were close to wrapping up. So it's 7:28 on my clock. So I want to take a little 5-minute break. We will then go into our next matter, which is the continuation of the hearing on the zoning bylaw amendments. Let's get started. So if I may, I'm going to share my screen for a moment. And where is it? Where is it? Where did it go? No, geez, where did it go? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right, so for those of you who saw it or didn't see it, I did a summary. I didn't want to discuss this in a group email earlier in the week. I apologize. I just wanted to be very careful about the open meeting law in case we got into any deliberations, but just as staff would give us a report, I thought I'd give you a little report. So where we stand tonight, I just recited what our votes were. Last meeting, we had 2 articles to vote on tonight. I don't want to. Oh, there we go. Okay. We were at the ZBA last night, Judge Cutler and I. They're going to vote next Tuesday. We went through all the articles. There are some tweaks that we'll get to that came from their discussion. Advisory was last week. They took votes on all 6. And they were unanimous, 8-0 on every one of them. On the select board, there was a chance they might have dealt with some things last night. They didn't get to them. So all of the presentation to the select board will be on the 4th. And that is the deadline for us to get everybody's recommendations in print. Based on the little changes we will discuss tonight, I will report to advisory and what happens in case they feel they need to do a revote. They're going to meet next Wednesday, I understand, and the bylaw committee is going to meet on Monday, and we will just reaffirm our votes next Monday, and just was recounting the votes that we had up to this point. So the edits that have occurred in the last through these board meetings, as you know, in our last hearing, we made a change of one word in Article 1, one of the new purposes of the zoning bylaw. That's been incorporated. We had voted on it, still making that change. In the definition of height, we had changed the language for the bottom part of the measurement. That'll be 12 equidistant data points rather than 10 feet apart. And then the data points will be at the location of the foundation, not 10 feet off the foundation. And we voted on that with those changes being made. And again, I'm looking at my notes. This might not have come from Woody Chittick, this next bullet, but I think it was at our hearing. We took out the first sentence of what's the proposed 12.1A as an unnecessary bit of language. And that was a change. As I'm looking at my notes, we made it our hearing a couple of weeks ago. In the ZBA meeting last night, and now maybe I won't get my screen. I don't know if we have the Article 12 draft easily available, but in Article 12, we're not only making the changes, the second part of it is to make this deletion that I note here. And then the third part of the warrant article is about some definitional changes. So for reference, section 4.2 of A of the bylaw is where, if you will recall, in 2021, town meeting restored the use variance that had been gone for 20 years back into the bylaw. It was put into 4.2A. it gave both the return of a use variance and it also set up the process of a use special permit process. Now, the legal issue involved is that the way it's written seems to imply that the zoning board can issue a special permit for any use it likes. Judge Cutler has informed us that it's very well established by case law that no, you can only issue a special permit for a use that is allowed by special permit in your table of uses. So Woody had pointed out that this was approved by the Attorney General. We made arguments as why the Attorney General may not have even read it, much less understood it, but the case law is the case law. It's a legal argument. But the point is Woody would like to, and we've tried to assure Woody and the zoning board that when we are redoing the table for Article 4, the table of uses in the fall, this would be addressed. But he would still like to have the ability to grant a use special permit in these interim 6 months before we deal with the table. The Judge Cutler offered to, it was her idea to say, okay, we can keep that part in. We have to rewrite it because the use variance part would come out of 4.2 because it is now actually moved into the new Article 12 where it belongs. But we would have to create language to just leave the use special permit of 4.2A in place for the next 6 months. And now we'll deal with it. If I'm misstating that, Judge?
I just want to clarify, and I think maybe the planning board doesn't know what sentence we're talking about, but in 2021 town meeting took out a sentence that was existing in Article 12 that said a variance may not authorize a use not otherwise permitted in the district in which the land is or structure is located. They took that out. They replaced it with a new provision, which they put in Article 4 as section 4.2, and it says a special permit may authorize a use not otherwise addressed in the bylaws. A variance may authorize a use specifically prohibited in the bylaws. And I had given the opinion that under Chapter 40A and the way it has been interpreted by the courts, special permits for uses have to be for specific uses. So you just can't say, well, the board, somebody can issue a special permit for anything that isn't covered in the bylaw. This is too broad authority. It's not specific enough and it violates uniformity requirements for zoning. I know last night I suggested that maybe we could just leave in the first part of that sentence. Special permit may authorize a use not otherwise addressed in the bylaws. In rethinking this, because this is such a difficult provision, and we are going to be taking it out in the fall, that's my hope. I'm suggesting that we don't raise any issues whatsoever and just leave it be instead of fooling around with it. I don't think we can make it any better with any changes that we can make to that sentence, and it just sort of raises an issue potentially that we probably don't want to get to right now. So I'm just going to suggest that we just leave it be. And to the extent that there's any conflict between the new language in Article 12, which actually authorizes the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant a variance from use regulations, if anybody suggests that maybe they don't have the full power to do that because of this sentence, we can deal with it, but hopefully, we don't have to address this anymore for now, and we'll take care of it in the fall, and that's my recommendation.
And so the line in the warrant article itself that says deleting 4.2A in its entirety.
We will just remove that entirely.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And again, it creates a legal problem should a neighbor challenge something that the zoning board did between now and the fall. But, we've had it for a couple of years. It hasn't come up as a problem yet. you know, and we will deal with it. And if a legal issue comes up in the interim period, we deal with it. But this will, you know, this addresses a concern of Woody's, and, you know, again, I don't think the judge or I think it's major problematic for us to take this one Part B of the warrant article out.
Yeah, since we're not touching Article 4 in any other way, it makes sense just simply to leave Article 4 alone for this time, you know, for this session.
Do we have the Article 12 available to us, Lauren?
Yes, I can share that. That was one of my questions. The other question I have for you, while I have your attention, is in regards to Article 12. That's the site plan review item that I brought up to you earlier today. Did you want me to bring it up now or save it? For later?
Yes, so Judge Cutler, Lauren brought up an issue about the site plan review with the 75-day limit that is in the provision we've written. And I believe the project we just did, but it happens in a couple of areas with our zoning that we're doing simultaneous site plan and special permit. And so we were wondering if that 75-day limit on a site plan review is applicable when you're doing a joint permit.
Yeah, I think what you'd have to do is just get an agreement from the applicant to continue it.
Okay.
Well, I guess the question I had was, would there be any sense to putting in just a statement in the revised section 12 point, I believe it's 6, about site plan review that states this timeline shall not apply to combination site plan review and special permit applications? That way it's just sort of nipped in the bud.
Let me just see what it is.
It's 12.7 here. Here we are.
Yeah, 12.7 subsection.
Subsection E, procedures.
E4. Yeah.
So these are the two timeline pieces that I just think could potentially pose, you know, a little bit of a problem and when it comes to site plan review combined with special permit applications, which you have quite often in the village business district, for example, in the, you know, harbor overlay. There's a lot of things that require both. So I would just hate for the board to be in a situation where they're relying on an applicant to agree to a waiver of a timeline. You know, because for example, we've had a lot of special permit site plan review combo applications that have gone on for quite some time that would exceed these timelines.
Well, it wouldn't be a problem because one of the findings that the planning board has to make is that the proposal meets all the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So if there is no special permit granted as of yet, they'd have to deny the site plan application. So, I mean, it sort of puts the applicant in the position where they're going to cooperate. They're not going to insist on the deadline.
Haven't we? I mean, we've been under a timeline limit for site plan review anyway now.
You have, yes.
Yeah.
So it's never been brought up an issue because I think, you know, an applicant doesn't want to make waves and make us make two separate decisions and potentially muck things up. So.
Well, you're going to have two separate decisions because a site plan review decision is a separate animal. However, I think that it only works for a special permit use if they either have the special permit in hand. So let's say they already went to the zoning board of appeals for a special permit that the planning board wasn't the permit granting authority for. So they have that in hand. They come for their site plan application. That's fine. They meet the requirement of the bylaw in that regard that they have their special permit. But if they're seeking a special permit at the same time they're seeking site plan review from the planning board, both from the planning board, then they really have no choice but to allow the site plan review to continue as long as the special permit is continuing. Because if they don't have the special permit, they don't meet the requirements of the bylaw. That's one of the reasons for denying the site plan. So I don't think it should be a problem at all. You just have to make sure you get on the record that they have a request in writing that you continue the site plan review. That's, you know, so I think it should be fine. And the other point I want to make is, you know, I've heard a lot of discussions back and forth on well, what comes first, the special permit or the site plan review? And that would be in a case, for example, where the zoning board of appeals is the special permit granting authority. And really, it's sort of, in that case, the site plan review application could be reviewed first, and it would just be a condition that it is subject to the applicant obtaining the special permit. So, it can be worked out. But I see your point. And, if that's the board's direction, we can try and accommodate that in language.
Well, I guess my question with that is, can we essentially alter the 75-day limit by saying it's a different limit when we're dealing with a combined application?
We could add a further provision to that effect, yes.
Okay. Shall we do that?
So you want to make it so that the 75-day period would essentially be inapplicable if it's a joint.
Yeah, maybe it would just say the 75-day limit can be extended when the site plan review is part of a joint application with a special permit.
When it's reviewed concurrent with a special
When
permit.
it's reviewed concurrently with a special permit.
I will work on that.
All right. Does everybody on the board understand that change and what's being brought up is?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The other thing, Lauren, can you scroll up to 12.1 for a moment?
Sure.
I just caught something in my notes. We voted, I believe, to make a change to 12.1B, where we discussed that at our hearing on March 8th. Was that incorporated? I know the change in 12.1A was, but.
This article version appears to be dated today, so I think.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so open it up to the board for any further discussion. What you see in front of you will be the article with Part B taken out and with the addition of some language in 12.7E to address the situation we were just discussing with a joint or with a combined site plan and special permit review process. So with those two changes, are we any further discussion, or are we in a position to take a recommendation vote?
I don't have any specific comments on the edits to this particular section.
Okay,
I
anyone?
don't either, Tom.
Okay, anyone else? All right, then, I did the motions last time. I'll do one now. I'll do a motion that the board give a positive recommendation to the warrant article amending zoning article 12 as amended tonight by taking out Part B and by inserting an appropriately worded provision to deal with the joint site plan and special permit applications.
Second,
Okay, roll call, alphabetical roll call vote.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Who's next? Deirdre.
She's on mute.
Deirdre Hobson, aye.
Chris Plex, aye.
All right, thank you all. All right, so the next issue, in my
Got
memo
someone
was just,
on-
well, I'm sorry,
You had
yes.
somebody, Tom, you had
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, no, I saw that, Ginger Jensen had a comment, about some house that got built on Jerusalem Road with a special variance. I'm not sure, but she was commenting at the time when we were taking out the part about 4.2A, and she agrees that we should leave it as is. I would just explain to Ginger that, ultimately there's going to be a change to that, but that change is going to come in the fall when we deal with the entire table of uses under Article 4. So
I
appreciate
think
the
she's
comment.
referring to 580 Jerusalem Road.
Yeah, all right, yeah. And Okay,
Sorry for
great.
the
I know, no, she's just added another comment, so I think we're all set there, so. And I didn't see that anybody else in the public out there had any comment, but if you do on this Article 12, please let me know right now. All right. So the other issue that we have to vote on today, well, let me just mention a side issue before we get to the height one. Woody also mentioned last night in the comments on Article 8. Again, the zoning board did not express any problem with the change to our single lot exemption. Again, that has sailed through with very little comment, contrary to what we thought might happen with all the boards. But he had mentioned 8.10, which is a provision that deals with allowance of temporary structures, and the judge's draft had proposed removing it, and Woody didn't approve of that. But the reason for deleting it is that it really doesn't belong in Article 8, it belongs in Article 4.
And
So,
it is also incomprehensible, by the way. You really
Yeah.
can't tell what can happen and what is being allowed where, and whether it's a structural special permit or a use special permit. You really can't tell. There's no definition of temporary structure, so we don't know. Are we
Yeah,
talking
and
about
again-
house? Are we talking about a fence? You know, it's.
yeah, and when we get to, again, when we get to Article 4 and we're outlining uses, we're going to, this is a gap where we don't define temporary structures very well. We have some sections about not having, I think there's another section about having a temporary mobile home someplace, again, when somebody has a casualty loss or construction. But we're going to deal with these things in Article 4. But again, the question here is, to address a concern that is probably not really a concern, should we put in the warrant article that's dealing with Article 8, that Article 10 gets moved to Article 4 for the time being? And
You
if
mean
it does,
section 8.10, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
8.10, yes. 8.10, if it was moved to Article 4, can either become 4.3R, which is the next number, or it could become a separate one, 4.4. So make that choice. But-
And that was my question. Do you want it in with the
Yeah,
area
I-
regulations, or do you want it in with the use regulations?
Yeah, and again, it's something that is going to be completely rewritten when we get to the table of uses, but if it helps placate Woody's concerns for the 6 months, I'm not opposed to that. So we already took a vote on 8, so we'll re-vote on 8, but I would suggest we add to 8 as part of the first part of the article. Remember, that's the one warrant article that's going to have 2 separate votes, but as part of the first part, we're amending the existing language and reorganizing things, that we add B. 1B will be, and to move section 8.10 to section 4.3R is what I would call it. If everybody's okay with that, we'll make that change to, again, it's inconsequential, but I want to avoid situations where inconsequential things are blown up on town meeting floor. So
We want to renumber 308.10.
to 304.3 parentheses capital R. As I believe the current bylaw ends at 4.3Q.
Yes,
So,
okay.
so with that
Right.
with that amendment, I would make a motion that the board reaffirm its positive recommendation to pass the warrant article amending Article 8 with the added amendment that we will move existing 8.10 to 4.3R. Second. that? You? Any discussion on that? All right, roll call vote.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Callahan,
Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
Great, thank you very much. Again, on these two, since we made 2 minor changes, I will report those to advisory. If they feel the need to revote, let them revote. But otherwise, as far as zoning goes, we're just gonna get the final text to them tomorrow, Friday, so they just wanted to wait and saw the final text of everything in front of them before they vote on Tuesday. So thank you for that. So the last article, is Article 2. And that is regarding height. Again, at our last few, we made changes to that.
Tom, you're cutting out.
I'm sorry, yes, I'm turning away, looking at my notes, turning away from it. Last meeting, we made some changes, those have been incorporated. The advisory committee, again, supported it 8-0, the zoning board. Judge can correct me or back me up on this. I didn't hear any sentiment against it. As a matter of fact, the majority sentiment was, or the two people that spoke on it were very strong in saying that they supported this definitional change with respect to houses. Woody has a concern about garages, but a lot of his concerns are the fact about future in-law apartments, but right now we don't allow those. And one of the topics for the fall articles is we are going to review the accessory dwelling bylaw, which currently only allows accessory dwellings within the main house. And we're going to make a policy decision about whether we do expand the right of accessory dwellings to outbuildings like garages, barns, sheds, and the like. If we do, we will adjust, the height of a garage right now is 15 feet, and we will adjust the height accordingly. And Woody appeared to be satisfied to that. So again, they didn't vote finally, but there wasn't any great opposition expressed to what we would do. There wasn't any opposition expressed to what the proposal was. So what you see before you is the definition, and the part about the measurement itself is for the bottom measurement is within the definition of pre-construction grade. And then I think further down, we have a new definition for roof line.
By the way, I don't think we need that last phrase. I know we changed where the line was.
Say that again.
And on pre-finished grade, I think.
Oh, where we said the structures.
We don't need at the location of said foundation. We said at equidistant intervals around the entire perimeter of the structure's proposed foundation, period.
Okay. I chalk that up to my excessive verbiage. I'm often guilty. That's fine. So what's before you is what's on the page there, except with that small amendment at the end of the definition of pre-construction grade. Any further comment on this? Clark, I'll let you start.
Well, in terms of the pre-construction grade calculation, I think that eliminating the 10-foot outside the foundation it's certainly a simplification. As well as some people complained about the 10-foot intervals. I think it can stand. I mean, in some larger projects, the 12 equidistant points might not be enough, but it says minimum. So it would be up to the designer applicant to make that assessment, and then whoever's reviewing it said, well, you got a 200-foot long building and you only put 12 points in. It's clearly not evenly pitched, so we want some more. And that would probably be reasonable, but then not required here. But I think,
yeah, I mean, if we got a
simplification-
really a building with a super large footprint, you're right, 12 may be
this-
enough as long as
might not be enough.
it's better than 2 or 3.
The simplification is good. I mean, in terms of the roof line, as an architect, a hip roof is quoted as being the ridge line, and a hip roof would basically have a kind of 1-point peak as its typology. But I don't think we're gonna have any conflicts with that, so I'd say just leave it. I mean, even the term deck line of the mansard roof, well, you know, just get an architectural reference for that if somebody needs it. We don't see a lot of mansard roofs these days, although with a lowered height, we might get a lot of them. So my main focus and comments was that I did some careful analysis of the change from midpoint of rafter to the peak, and I still think that the 35 foot, while it's a 5 foot height difference for story and a half garages and portions of a building that would be allowed to be closer to a setback, like porches and maybe family rooms, things like this. It would basically limit those from a story and a half to a story, and then it would limit the height of buildings or houses from 2.5 stories to 2 stories. You might be able to squeak in part of an attic, but I just think that that our bylaws should have some built-in flexibilities in this the height issue, where you know, the buildings or houses that get built are continuously built on the more difficult slope-wise properties, but having the built-in flexibility of the current height, which is a maximum of 40 feet, I think is useful for applicants. It helps. I mean, for homeowners that want to make changes, I think it helps to build value for the commercial as well as houses where, you know, we've seen that there's a lot more pressure since the pandemic on people's houses, and they have been building garage offices and attic offices and basement offices and things like this. So I remain against the change from midpoint of rafter to peak. And there's one legal component that I'd like counsel and Judge Cutler to weigh in on. I'm quite familiar with Section 6 of Mass General Laws, which delves into, in a not perfect manner, existing non-conforming protections. As well as there's a recent case of Belalta versus Brookline. And what came out of the Belalta case was that if you had an existing non-conforming like setback condition, you know, your house was 15 feet from the property line and 20 foot was required, that there was basically an unfairness built into that with people whose houses were conforming. But if you have that built-in non-conforming, then you are allowed to increase that non-conforming. So, you know, using the example, if you're 10 feet from the property line and the zoning is 15 feet and you wanted to make it 8 feet from the property line, you could do that, provided that you're if you're not making changing the nature of the nonconformity, then you can get a permit as of right. If you are changing the nature of the nonconformity, you'd have to request a special permit.
Well, that's
Obviously,
not
if
quite-
you're
Can I interrupt you for a minute? That's a little bit.
well, I haven't gotten to the point, so you
No,
can.
but I want you to make sure you understand that doesn't say just because your setback is non-conforming, you can increase that. You can't increase the non-conforming nature of the structure. So if the structure has a 10-foot setback instead of 15, you can't go to 8.
Well, that Belalta, the Belalta decision belies that.
I don't think so.
I think by special permit, if if
You
what you're
cannot
proposing
increase-
is substantially not more detrimental, then you should be able to get the special permit. But in the case where the zoning height is being decreased from what's allowed now, we will be creating a number of existing non-conforming projects, future projects where there wouldn't necessarily, if a structure is existing non-conforming and it exceeds, it's say 36 feet instead of 35 feet, you could increase that because you're not creating a new non-conformity.
All right, yeah,
Yeah, okay, this was a little complex.
no,
But, I mean,
with all-
if I put the case law and the interpretations in front of everybody and then we talked about it, that would be one thing, but if this is a concern by being able to increase nonconformities,
You cannot increase nonconformities without a special permit.
I didn't say,
Or
I
variance.
didn't say that. You would be able to increase a nonconformity by special permit. I did say that.
yeah, but that's already in our bylaw. In Article 8, in our existing bylaw, and then carrying through to the new Article 8, that is there. Right now, Section 8.8 says change of non-conforming use, the special permit granting authority may authorize a special permit, blah, 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 blah.
Well, I'd be
Provided-
happy to,
pro-
I'd be happy
provided
to
it-
circulate the case law.
Well,
Or just talk about it on the floor of town meeting. It doesn't matter to
with all
me.
due respect, we got into this a little bit last night. I think you have to give some deference to the judge's opinion. She was Chief Justice of the Land Court that knows more about the law than all of us combined,
Well, I mean,
including lawyers, others.
I'm
of
just
us.
making,
With the exception of Caroline.
I'm just making a point that once you have a nonconformity, then you're allowed to increase it by special permit.
And that
more
won't
than what's
change
allowed
here.
by zoning,
That
Not in
won't ch-
all
that won't-
without a variance.
No, not in all respects. It depends upon what the zoning of the property is, what, the use of the property is. I mean, there's many factors. I'm not sure what case you're referring to.
Belalta versus Brookline. And there's been a lot of discussion of it, and basically in the case, large house exceeded the existing FAR, they by building a dormer. And so in the study of it, it basically said, yeah, for existing 1 and 2 family, if you have you can increase the nonconformity by special permit. And previously, a lot of case laws gone, not allowed that option. But you guys are giving
Well,
me
Clark, I guess.
a hairy eyeball, so I'm gonna
No,
quit
the other-
talking and let somebody else talk.
Well,
unless
no,
there's
and my
Some
response,
discussion.
That would be the basis for your decision on this, whether somebody can or can't increase by special permit. I mean, there are going to be changes that will result in some nonconformities. And that is a fact. So that is certainly something to consider. But whether they can raise their roof or not, I think you're incorrect on that, but I will look at that case again, but usually you can't increase the actual nonconformity to more than it is.
Yeah,
So-
take a look at the case, and there's been a number of interpretations of it. I
An
think it would be-
alteration is one thing, an expansion is something else, and additional nonconformities are a third thing. So, I'll take a look at it for you, but I think you might be slightly off on it. But we'll make sure, and you might be right, and so we'll look.
I'm gonna hold my comment, Amy, we'll go to you next, and we'll keep going in alphabetical order.
I don't really have any comments on this. I feel that the effort on the part of all parties to try to meet in the middle, recognizing what the community is interested in, what the other boards that we have in town to provide us with insights has the position it's taken. And I feel that in the time that I've been on this board, the reaction of the public to the changes that are happening, which are not in alignment with the town as it looks and feels. And so I really have nothing more to say other than I think we're trying to do the best job we can without being too restrictive. But I also think that if we are not restrictive to some extent, that's necessary, we're going to end up with situations in which people are really deeply disappointed at the overshadowing of their homes. At some point, there's a value decrease that occurs. Just because a big house gets built next to you doesn't mean your house value is going to go up. There's no statistical evidence to show that. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Raina. Kevin?
I just have a concern with regard to a point Clark made, and I would really like to flesh this out ahead of town meeting. I feel like Clark has a point that he wants to get across or he needs clarification on, and I want that to be clarified to this group ahead of any decision by this group so that we have reached the best decision before this goes to town meeting. Clark made a point about discussing this at town meeting with regard to his point, and if that's the direction he thinks he wants to go with that, then I think that's not the right position for us to be in now on this. We have legal minds on this group. They're on the call in attendance now. If we need to get a decision on case law and the standing of it and how it applies so that Clark gets clarity on this, we need to do that. The time to debate this amongst ourselves and the nuances of it is now, not at town meeting, like Clark alluded to. That doesn't mean at town meeting there isn't an opportunity for others to bring up issues. But I would really be sorely disappointed if members of this board use that as a platform to discuss their own concerns then instead of now. That's all.
I share your concern about that, and we've had a pledge from one individual who's not going to do that at town meeting.
Tom, can you get closer to your mic?
This has happened before, and yes, we don't want this to happen, but there comes a point in time where we take a vote, we make the decision that's the right decision, and I can't control who's going to go up and try to blow things up at town meeting, but yes, Judge has pledged that she will give us her analysis of that case, but I guess I guess I'm frustrated is that to give credence to a legally unsupportable position, as we did with Woody, and we're accommodating him for for letting this improper provision survive for another 6 months. But there comes a point where you have to rely on the expertise we have, the legal expertise on legal issues. And I'll say this, we have a 35-foot height limit. For one particular style of roof, we have created a loophole. We are closing that loophole. There's no logical sense to keep that loophole. And we've all heard at large home reviews that nobody wants to see these in residential parts of town. And I have said repeatedly, separate this definition from the actual number of 35. We can change that if we feel that is necessary to deal with multifamily housing on 3A. Perhaps in the village, we certainly want to change it in the lower direction towards the harbor, and we will do that. But the uniform, there's been now unanimous votes across the board that this is a logical thing. That it was said last night by one of the zoning board members that the average person on the street will think that the bottom is the bottom and the top is the top. But we've created this one exception. And it's a loophole against the height limit that the town set however many years ago. And, the zoning law, the state zoning law says you can't treat things differently within districts, and for whatever reason, we have a bylaw that says we are treating peak groups different than other groups. And, you know, at the state planning seminar I went to this weekend, I ran into one of the experts, and he has given us online seminars on A&R about a year ago, A&Rs, and, you know, we went into conversation, and it wasn't about our specific bylaw, but it just casually came up that a story is considered by the experts, particularly in a residential setting, as 10 feet. Well, 10 feet in 35 feet gets you 3 stories. We have a building in the village that is not at the 40-foot limit that has 3 stories. If it had to be 35 feet, it'd have to knock off 2 feet, 10 inches. I suggest to you they could still get 3 stories in there. So, you know, this thing that we're going to limit size and limit things is, I just think, is utterly ridiculous and is not supported by fact. So you know, there's a point, we are charged with making a decision here. You know, we'd have to continue this hearing or schedule a new public hearing if we were to change it between now and May 1st, but Clark will get his opinion. Clark will make his personal decision of whether he's going to get up and try to speak to this at town meeting or not. That's up to him. I will persuade him not to do it. Everybody will persuade him not to do it, but it's his right if he wants to do it. And it's been done before. So, you know, we can't accommodate for everything and have a total kumbaya at town meeting as much as we'd like to, but this makes common sense and closes a giant loophole that we have. And we all know that the continuing pressure of the development patterns in this town is people pushing the limit of this 40 feet in residential districts, in the village, everywhere. And we need to make a stand on that. The community is telling us, most of the community, you read 143 comments, if you see our large home reviews, my sense is the majority of the community does not want to see this happen. And now is the time to change it before we start getting the rash of applications that are going to push those limits. That's all I'll say on the subject. If you're all set, Kevin, I'll go to Deirdre.
Well said, Tom. Thank you. And no, I don't have any further comments.
Thank you.
Both Kevin and Tom's comments I echo. I joined this board because I am overwhelmingly, constantly inundated with people who have grown up in this town, including all of my family on my husband's side, almost 50 years, who are tired of what we're seeing happen to Cohasset. And if we don't trust in the legal counsel who we have put forth to work with us on these bylaws, we are foolish. We need to move forward, and we need to move forward in the proper way. And we have enlisted people to work with us to create what we think is the best motion right now. Everyone is entitled to their position and their thoughts, but I am asking, I am pleading at this point. We are going to town meeting. We need to go forward with a consistent force, all of us supporting the movement of making our bylaws tighter and better for this town. And I understand, I give Judge Cutler and Carolyn go explore whatever legislation or decisions were out there in the courts and come back if we need to and tell us. We don't have much time left. So let's try and make this happen so that we can create a town that we want to see over the next 40 years for all of us that are left here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Deirdre. Chris.
In the same vein as Deirdre, the reason I'm here is because if it were still light out, you could see One Pleasant Street through this window. It doesn't fit in the village. It doesn't fit in my neighborhood. I have no idea why the people who voted for it did. And we successfully knocked down what happened at 2 Smith Place, but that still may come back. So we need to tighten things up. That's what the town is expecting of us. That's why a lot of us are here. So let's do it.
Yeah, and just a reminder again, One Smith Place, and you know, I know just as well on 143, there's a lot of negative comments about it. It is in compliance with our current guideline. And again, the measurement, and I got this from John Hallen, the measurement to the midpoint is 33 feet. The measurement to the top is 37.10.5. So to comply with this new definition, it would not have to knock off only 2 feet, 10.5 inches. And I would suggest it would still be, with dormers, it would still be 3 floors of usable space. But that's what we have. And we've had it, you know, the town in its wisdom has lived with 35 feet for a long time. But it's the fact that that midpoint thing could have made that building 40 feet. It has made it taller than 35, could have made it as high as 40. And that's something I think the town is clearly telling us to take care of. And in the fall, when we do more forums on this topic, we are going to solicit more opinions on this. If people say, no, we don't like 35, go to 30, go to 32. The harbor should be something else. We should use it, you know, like some of our neighbors do, as a height measurement, or X number of stories, and then we'd have to define story and give a measurement to a story. We can do that. You know, or, you know, affordable housing came, well, we're concerned we won't be able to do the multifamily housing we need to do. Okay, well, on 3A for multifamily housing, maybe we'll say 40 feet, maybe we'll say 50 feet, but we will have those discussions and we will make those policy decisions in the fall. And whatever numbers we pick, though, the definition is the bottom is the bottom, the top is the top. That's what this is about.
I agree with everything that you said. Sorry, Amy, I'll be quick.
No, that's all right. No,
This
and,
is-
and One Pleasant Street is a poster child for the examples of things that are coming and happening, and it's appropriate to bring it up. And the
I
town
see
needs
this-
to reevaluate.
I see this as a small step in the right direction. I agree the changes we're talking about tonight wouldn't have had much of an impact there.
All right. Anybody in the public who's here? I see we have 4 attendees. Anybody wish to be heard or make a comment? Give you a few minutes to type something in. Okay. Judge Cutler or Carolyn or Lauren, anything that you'd like to add or comment on at this point? Lauren.
A point of clarification earlier, you had mentioned if you were to close tonight and make a change moving in between now and town meeting, that you'd have to re-advertise for public hearing. You would not have to do that.
Okay.
It's not a recommended path, but you can, even as late as the meeting, the night of, which would be May 1st, call a meeting of the planning board
Yeah.
for town meeting and recommend to the floor of town meeting a change. So I just want you to know that's an avenue, and you don't need to go through another Section 5 hearing process. Tonight would be really, if you were ready to vote and recommend to move forward, it would be like any changes you would make would be not substantial content modifications. It would be
Right.
something.
I've seen boards change their votes on the floor of town meeting. We have to call the meeting that night, which we will do as a matter of course, but I think the only change we're looking at, if something were to happen, is a change in the vote, whatever the vote tonight is going to be. So,
Listen, Tom, just a quick relevant issue. I like the grade change. I just don't like the height thing, and it's really a side issue that you'd be creating new non-conforming heights. I don't think I don't need to wait for confirmation that yes is going to be non-conforming, and if you increase the non-conforming nature, you have to get a special permit. I don't need that. I mean, I don't like the height changes because it drastically affects design options for homeowners and commercial properties alike. I don't think there's anything based on this language of this definition. I'd vote against it, and I'll vote against it on the floor of town meeting as a planning board member, as a bylaw working group member. So it may be that we can vote tonight.
Oh, we are gonna vote tonight, Clark. I mean, you know, again,
But I thought people were making noise about putting things off. Okay,
no, we just, I
I
mean,
didn't need to make the,
no, we were talking about the just in cases, but like, as I said, you know, you can expect that we're going to try to persuade you. Maybe some of us will just try to persuade you to a point and then give up on it, but you
You've
know,
got
it
two
is.
questions.
It is
from the
important
public.
that we show some solidarity amongst all the boards, and thus far we have unanimous votes all the way down the line. And I am anticipating at least a favorable vote, if not a unanimous vote from the zoning board, based on our discussions last night. And it would be important to have that, and it's never a good look to have a member of a board speak in opposition to something. And you know, war story, we dealt with this on Concom a long time
Mr.
ago.
Chair,
and I
we
think-
have,
you
we
know-
have comments from the public.
Yeah, I know,
unanimous votes are great,
see
but
that,
I
Amy,
don't,
I'm about to
I don't
get
see
there.
that as a requirement. I don't see unanimous
I get
vote
it,
or
Clark.
unanimous thinking as a requirement.
I get it, Clark. And we will address it that day and hope to persuade you otherwise, but if we don't, we don't. So nobody's saying you won't have your right to speak, so. All right, so we have two comments. Kathy Berrigan, 646 Jerusalem. I heartily support the position stated by Tom, Amy, Chris, Deirdre, and Judge Cutler. Thank you to all planning board members for your dedication and work. Ann Brophy, didn't give her address, but I know she lives on Beechwood Street. I agree, it is a small step in the right direction. We have a long way to go. Bigger is definitely not better. The town is losing its character with all of the overly large buildings. And hopefully it goes lower. Thank you to both of you. I guess I just would say to people, yes, Deirdre's comment is very passionate, and we've heard, you know, I've heard that too from a lot of people who've grown up here, and you can certainly see it in social media. You know, but again, people ought to be realistic that there are limits that what we can do with the zoning power, you know, but again, if people at this day and age think the 35 feet that was decided 50 years, 60 years ago, 60 plus years ago, is no longer appropriate, we will have that opportunity to have that debate over the course of the summer and into the fall town meeting article. So I encourage everybody who's out there to be ready and to participate in that discussion. So, all
Can we
right.
call for the question, please?
I'm sorry.
I said, can we call for the question,
I'm
please?
going to. All right. My motion is that we board give a positive recommendation to Article 2 with tonight's slight amendment that was made to the definition of pre-construction grade suggested by Judge Cutler.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. Alphabetical roll call.
Clark Brewer, nay.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
All right. Thank you all.
Just one point. At the first part of the public hearing, we actually referenced draft article numbers, warrant article numbers, as opposed to zoning article numbers. Did you want to refer to that rather than referring it to?
I believe, you know, when we were at advisory, this came up, and then I saw something, the selectmen, I saw their agenda for last night. I think the articles are 22 through 27, and I believe they're going in strict numerical order. So number
This would be
22,
23.
I think 22 is dealing with the changes to 1 and 13. 23 is dealing with Article 2 and the height. 23 is Article 3. 24 is Article 6. 25 is Article 8, 12. Yes, I believe those are the numbers, but I leave that to the powers that be to set those.
But did you want to refer to that number in your draft warrant article number as opposed to saying Article 2? Or
Well, I don't know it, but I think the votes we've taken so far have been to the article, whatever number that it will be granted, that is doing with the amendments to zoning article. Blah. You know,
Okay.
that's how we proceed. I think that's legally sufficient. I would hope it would be. So anyway, so I will report to the advisory committee on the small tweaks made tonight. I will report to all the boards what their votes were tonight. Zoning will be voting on Tuesday. The their meetings are by Zoom. The select board is meeting on the 4th to take up all the articles and their recommendations. I believe their meetings are solely by Zoom. I don't know if they're doing hybrid for that one, but they might. But that'll be our schedule, and the bylaw committee will reaffirm its votes on Monday, the 27th. Thank you all for your time. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Alphabetical roll call.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
And if I didn't mention